Hey, what's up, stock compounders? Brad here. So today I want to open up a conversation about Micron, okay? Micron stock. This is a company that first came to my attention because Mohnish Pabrai, I think, bought quite a bit of it in 2019. And since then, Li Lu has added a position. You got David Tepper, you've got Guy Spear, you've got Prem Watsa. So there's a lot of great investors who, have taken a significant position in Micron. So I wanted to kind of go through this article here to make a case for why Micron could be a great long-term compounder. Mohnish Pabrai thinks it's a long-term compounder. He's mentioned that in a few different talks. So I want to open it up here and kind of start to form a case for Micron. And then, of course, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments what you know about Micron, what questions you have. So, again, we can collaboratively attack this thing and try to understand the investment thesis for this business. But first, before I get into this Motley Fool article, I want to share a few comments that Mohnish Pabrai made about Micron. So, he was asked what is compelling to him about Micron. It's the leading producer of DRAM and NAND memory chips. The memory industry is an oligopoly, okay, with three major players. So that's compelling. Micron has 28% of the market share. There's huge tailwinds, which we'll get into in this Motley Fool article, and high barriers to entry. It's a very capital intensive business to get into. And like I mentioned, it's owned by Pabrai, Li Lu, and David Tepper, in addition to Guy Spear and Prem Watsa. So, the free lunch portfolio, something Pabrai puts out every year on his blog, there's basically 5 different managers that are tracked in order to come up with shameless cloner stocks for the free lunch portfolio. And so 3 of those 5 have bought into Micron recently: Pabrai, Li Lu, and David Tepper. Micron also bought back 5% of its shares in 2019. So not only is it a cloner pick, it's potentially also an Uber cannibal pick, a company that's eating itself, a company that's aggressively retiring its equity, okay, shares of stock. So, that's awesome. If we can check 2 of the 3 buckets that are used in the free lunch portfolio, both cloner and cannibal, that's compelling, very compelling. So let's get into this article here. Could Micron become a millionaire maker stock? Memory and storage specialist. So what are we looking at here? People often look at Micron and they see kind of a commodity business, right? But when you take into account there's only 3 major players and there's a very high barrier to entry with the capital intensity of this kind of business, it starts to put into question whether or not it's actually a commodity business. It talks a little bit about Micron's portfolio. It says they have the most attractive product mix in memory and storage space. 3 major producers of DRAM, like I mentioned, 1 of 6 NAND flash storage producers. And this is interesting to me, one of only 2 companies making a new type of memory called 3D XPoint, which is only just being commercialized. And this article came out in the beginning of 2020, just for some context there. So these, I mentioned the huge tailwinds. Memory and storage components, vital to next generation applications. AI, Internet of Things, gaming, 5G. We kind of get a sense for what's coming. There's we're going to need exponentially more memory and storage for the technologies that are really coming online, right on the edge of going mainstream. We had the internet, we had the smartphone, this next wave, I mean, we're going to have voice technology. We're going to be talking to all of our devices. We're going to have self-driving cars. We're going to need an exponential increase in this memory and storage to make these things work. So that's a big tailwind. And one of the things you can see here, even though it's been perceived as something of a commodity-like business, producing these memory and storage components, you can see the cyclicality of it, which, kind of may remind you of a commodity-like business, because of the concentration. There's less businesses that are involved in this industry. You can see these crests getting higher, right? See here, and even though this year is the predicted trough of Micron, you can see in past cycles, trough years have been negative, but it's projected that 2020 will not be negative. So if you get these peaks and troughs that keep going up, that's really going to help the price. That's going to help people be able to stomach the cyclicality of a business like this. And it looks like if you look at just the last few quarters of earning per share for Micron, I think the second quarter was the low. It was like 35 cents a share. And then you look at the third quarter, it's twice that. It's around 70 cents a share. So it seems like we've gotten through that trough. Of course, we don't know what lies ahead with the election, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the market environment right now. So we don't know, but based on past cycles, it looks like we may have moved through the trough at this point. What else? So let's get into these tailwinds. Industry consolidation, like I mentioned. Demand won't mean much if memory producers continue to oversupply the market. But of course, Micron has benefited from and participated in industry consolidation. So they bought this company here, this memory company in 2013, and then they bought this memory company in 2016. Micron gets 60% of the revenues for the DRAM market. So that's compelling. Tailwind 2, new chip capacity becoming more expensive to bring online. So the costs to increase bit production by 20% have doubled from a few years ago. This is another big barrier to entry. There's this intellectual property that goes along with having produced these memory chips for so long. So if you're trying to be a new entrant in this, not only do you have to put up a bunch of capital, there's an intellectual growth curve here that is probably going to be difficult to cross. Tailwind 3, Micron is improving relative to its competitors. So this, if you look at return on invested capital for Micron versus Samsung versus SK Hynix, you can see Micron is starting to, it's pulling ahead of, I believe it's SK Hynix, and it's closing in on Samsung. So it's improving, which is good news. Tailwind 4, massively better balance sheet and share buybacks. So, if you look at the balance sheet, Micron, as of the latest quarter, has more cash than debt, which is awesome. It's a really strong position to be in to weather any kind of storms that we might be facing in the near future. And then, of course, retiring 7% of shares outstanding. It looks like since the second quarter of 2017. No, the fiscal year that ended in August. So it looks like from August 2018 to August 2019, it retired 7% of its shares, which is, very strong, very aggressive share retirement program, share buyback program. Yeah, so that's kind of an overview of some of the tailwinds for Micron. So given all of this, I mean, a lot of that is fairly intuitive, right? It's fairly easy to understand. Given that, and then given how many great investors have been interested in Micron in the last, really just in the last year, maybe year and a half. I think Pabrai might have been buying in mid 2019. Based on his 13F filings, I assumed that he got in the low 30s. I got in around 35 with an initial stake. Now, it's somewhere around $46 per share. It looks like Li Lu, based on his 13F filings, got in no cheaper than $42 per share with the bulk of his holdings. So, if you're anywhere between 34, if you're anywhere really under 42, that's really why I set my buy price at 42, because it looks like that's where Li Lu bought most of his shares, somewhere in the low 40s. But even at today's prices, even at 46, as I learn more and more about Micron and notice these tailwinds, it could be compelling now. Could be compelling now. And I opened Dataroma so you can see here, which super investors own it. You can see it's a big part of the U.S. portfolios for Pabrai and Li Lu. And then, of course, you got David Tepper, Guy Spear, Prem Watsa, all with sizable stakes, nothing earth-shattering. But for Guy Spear, that's a fairly large stake, 4.5%. And then David Tepper as well. So very compelling. And then, of course, there's also a Value Investors Club write-up that was, done pretty recently, March 15th of 2020. So take a look at that if you want to kind of go deeper. A lot of what I shared in the Motley Fool article is kind of reiterated in here, but there's a little bit more depth in this. So you can see it's fairly dense. So really the argument here, there's a reasonable downside protection, 30% downside potential due to what's happening with the pandemic, significant medium-term upside of 70% to 130%. And that was at a share price of around $43. So, this person thinks, well, it might go down to what, $28, $30, something like that, but it may double from here. And so, that's a fairly aggressive write-up from what I've seen on Value Investors Club. Medium-term upside of a double. So it's a good read here if you're interested in Micron. So that's it, guys. I just wanted to give an overview of kind of where I'm at in terms of my understanding of Micron. It'd be great if you guys could let me know where you're at with Micron. I'm sure a lot of you have dove into this stock as Pabrai cloners like me. So, let me know what's compelling you, or, what's making you shy away from Micron. And if there's any articles that you've really enjoyed about Micron, I'd appreciate if you'd link to those. Even evaluation, if you've done evaluation for Micron, feel free to link to that as well. If you've got like a Google sheet that you want to share with the community here, that would be awesome. All right, guys, that's all I got for today. Hope you enjoyed this kind of quick overview of Micron. I'm sure I'll go deeper in future videos as I learn more, but wanted to open up the conversation and get you guys involved at an early stage here. So I will leave you, and I'll see you in the next video.